Okay, hi, hello. This is my first ever podcast. I'm just gonna see how it goes. And I hope you like what I have to tell you. So for this podcast, I've chosen to talk a bit about music. And ignore that glare right there. I don't really know what to do about it. Silly light. But I've decided to talk about music, and for this I've decided to discuss a bit about Jimi Hendrix and how he's influenced Prince over the years, and as well as how Prince has influenced a favorite artist of mine, Frank Ocean. I'll play some music later on, and we can listen to it together and just see how it is. And see their comparisons, see their differences. I have my notes right here, so if I keep looking down, it's just by making sure my information is accurate. You know, gotta make sure. And I just have the course outline because I gotta remember what I'm talking about. Okay, so jumping in a bit about Jimi Hendrix. So he was originally born Johnny Allen Hendrix, which is kind of interesting because I didn't know he had a different name than when he was born. And it was actually later changed by his dad to James Marshall, which is kind of funky, so it has no correlation to Jimmy whatsoever. But, you know, not my name. He was born on the 27th of November in 1942 in Seattle, Washington, and he had a really rough childhood growing up, so he was like bounced back and forth between different caregivers and some friends and like mild acquaintances, if you will. His mother, Lucille, she gave birth to Jimmy when she was only 17, and she had kind of a really rough relationship with his father from the start, and eventually ended up leaving the relationship almost immediately after they had 2 more children, also known as Jimmy's brothers, obviously, by the names of like Leon and Joseph. Unfortunately, Jimmy only got to see his mother like sporadically until she passed away. And in many ways, music kind of became like a safe place for Jimmy. So he kind of like channeled all his emotions, inner thoughts, and opinions into music and who he was. And with his father's encouragement, it kind of taught himself to play guitar. So he's a self-taught artist, which is pretty cool. And when he was only 16, his father bought him his first acoustic guitar, and a short year later, he bought him his first electric guitar. And it was a right-handed Supra Ozark. And he had to play it upside down because it's a blessing and a curse that he was left-handed, just like me. I gotta stop rocking back and forth. Almost immediately after his 17th birthday, he kind of began performing with a band called the Rocking Kings. And in 1959, he dropped out of high school and started bouncing between different jobs so he could focus more on his musical aspirations. And in 1961, for some reason, he took like an entire turn and enlisted himself into the military after his father. And while he was training as a paratrooper, he always found time for his music, of course, because it was his passion. And he formed a band called King Casuals with 2 Ks. He served in the army until 1962, when unfortunately he had been given an honorable discharge for injuring himself during a parachute jump. Poor guy. But that didn't stop him from, after leaving the military, he pursuing his music aspirations, and he actually started working under a name called Jimmy James as a session musician. And back in '65, he also formed a group of his own called Jimmy James and the Blue Flames. And they played gigs around New York City's Greenwich Village neighborhood. And later on, in about mid-1966, he had met, oh my goodness, I can't talk, someone named Chase Chandler, I'm so sorry, who is a bass player for the British rock group The Animals. And he had signed an agreement with Hendrix to become his manager. So that was pretty cool. That was like his big break, I guess you could call it. And he ended up convincing him to go to London, where he made like an alliance. He joined forces, for lack of better terms, with a bassist by the name of Noel Redding and the drummer Mitch Mitchell. Everyone's got such weird names. To form the Jimi Hendrix Experience. While they were performing in England, he had built up quite like a following worldwide, and he had become part of the country's rock royalty, with the Beatles, Rolling Stones, The Who, and Eric Clapton all becoming great admirers of his work. Yeah, so it was pretty exciting for him. He finally developed a people started knowing his name. And back in 1967, they released their first single called Hey Joe. And it was like an immediate upbringing and like a big smash. Like everybody loved it in Britain. And it was followed by hits such as Purple Haze and The Winds Cry Mary. And back in June 1967, he kind of won over a lot of the American music goers, music listeners, with his immaculate performance at the Monterey Pop Festival. And it actually ended with him lighting his guitar on fire. So as he was finally becoming somebody, like he was finally getting out there in the music industry, Hendrix had hit kind of a big break with his second album, which was Axis, Bold as Love, also released in the same year, 67, big year for him. His final album as part of the Jimi Hendrix Experience was by the name of Electric Ladyland in 1968, so just a year later. It featured the hit All Along the Watchtower, which was written not by him, but by the also equally as incredible Bob Dylan. And the band continued their tour until, fortunately, they split up a mere year later, back in 69. To end off Jimi Hendrix, we're already at 8 minutes, this is insane. And back in the same year, 69, Hendrix had performed an incredible music event, and it was at the Woodstock Festival. And he opened his set with a rock rendition of the Star Spangled Banner. And that kind of like took crowds in awe, almost. Like, it was an incredible, absolutely amazing performance, and it's definitely considered one of his most incredible to date. And back in the later of the year of 1969, he put together a new group. It's like his fourth one now, maybe. And he forming Band of Gypsies, which he formed with his, actually a buddy from the army, one of his colleagues, Billy Cox. And the drummer's name was Buddy Miles, oh my goodness. The band never really took off in how they'd hoped, unfortunately, but Hendrix had still continued to work on new albums, named First Rays of the New Rising Sun. And his two bandmates also were a part of it, obviously, they're the band, but unfortunately, Hendrix did not leave to see this in its completion. He ended up passing away in London from drug-related complications on the 18th of September of 1970, and he was only 27 years old. But granted, he did leave an astounding mark on the music industry today and has stolen the hearts of people around the world. Now, jumping a bit into Prince, because, you know, Prince, we all love Prince. We all know and love Prince, right? Prince sometimes bristled at comparisons between himself and our lovely rock legend Jimi Hendrix. And there was a lot of comparisons, especially between Prince's Purple Rain and, of course, Jimi Hendrix's Purple Haze. But Prince sampled Hendrix and reportedly had been considering performing a set of Hendrix's tunes. And Jimi Hendrix is a big inspiration for Prince for the longest time. So yeah, Prince was like heavily influenced by Jimi Hendrix. Of course, he had many other influencers, but Jimi Hendrix kind of took him to heart. I'm not sure how to explain that, but I think you understand what I mean. Regardless, Prince was his own person, and Prince was incredible, don't get me wrong. And he was a very famous singer, songwriter, and he, of course, a musician. And Prince was born Prince Rogers Nelson. Prince became interested in music at a young age, naturally, after growing up and being involved in it for so long. And kind of taught himself to play piano, guitar, and the drums. But sadly, he kind of went through like a deterrence after his parents split up when he was only about 10 years old. And so he was pushed back and forth a lot with his sister to different households until he finally decided, like, no, this is enough and I'm running away. He ran away and lived with his neighbors, the Andersons. Back when he hit high school, Prince had formed a band called Grand Central that was later changed to the name Champagne. And it was formed with one of his roomies, Andre Anderson, who later changed it to Andre Simone for some reason. and also Morris Day. Back in '78, Prince was signed to Warner Brothers Records, which is a pretty big deal for him naturally. Like, you're finally getting your big break, like you're out in the world now, like this is your calling. His band, The Revolution, that he eventually later on formed, he went on to create the album Purple Rain, which we all know, of course. It's from 1984. It was also a soundtrack to the film of the same name. So, Purple Rain, featuring Purple Rain. It grossed almost $70 million at the US box office. And it actually garnered an Academy Award for Best Original Song Score. I don't know why I'm being so awkward. I'm talking to a camera and it's just Ozimok. I'm a Ozimok. But nonetheless, its title track reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, while the hits When Doves Cry and also Let's Go Crazy hit number 1. And Crazy kind of joined this wild, electrifying rock song collection. Like, there was a whole bunch of electronic and fire, like, I don't know how to describe it. And When Doves Cry had like a super one-of-a-kind signature. So it was like displaying otherworldly kind of mixes of electronic and funk without a super traditional chorus. And the soundtrack also included 2 other major hits, of course. It's Prince, what do you expect otherwise? And the hits were I Would Die For You and Take Me With You. Obviously Prince was a well-known visual icon because of his trademark curls, his lovely flowy leather jackets, and his pretty bomb ruffle attire and those chef's kiss ruffle punk embellishments. In 1978, Prince had dropped his debut album, which was called For You, which was followed by the album titled Prince, just a year later, back in '79. And he played almost every instrument. Like, come on, he had everything under the sun. He's so talented. The album contained his first top 20 pop hit, and the easygoing I Wanna Be Your Lover, and the acclaimed Dirty Mind, dropped in 1980. And it was a material consisting of like highly graphic exploitations of like sexuality and fantasy. So yeah, as Prince continued to develop his career, he would be known for the tracks that like have a deep spirituality, you know, like darker, deeper meanings, kind of searching for majesty. And he was just really in a phase of learning and growth and development, and he was trying to find his way. And so music kind of helps you bring along through that. So a lot of his songs were usually based on his sexuality, based on his journey through life, his interests, his loves, his aspirations. And he kind of hit an international success rate when he released his album 1999, which was, funny enough, not even released in the same decade. It was released in 1982. It included the top 20 title track and this really cool synth funk ode about like nuclear doomsday. And Prince's work with NPG continued to like openly like toy around, like play with the ideas around sexuality, gender norms, the body. And to promote the album, he had appeared in the 1991 MTV Video Music Awards to do a live performance of Get Off. With the advent of the internet as the primary force for like distributing music, like handing it out, like here's music, look at all this music, this is good music. Prince was against like having his songs shared just at will on the web. He didn't like that people could just access it. So he kind of forced against the idea of providing his songs to online music platforms without proper upfront like compensation and profit sharing like he wanted. He didn't want his music anywhere, like this was his. He doesn't want people just posting it around willy-nilly for their amusement. And he kind of continued to take political stands with his performances as well. And on the 2nd of May, 2015, he had staged a dance rally for peace at Paisley Park to pay tribute to Freddie Gray, who was a 25-year-old African-American who had died in the police custody after his arrest in Baltimore. Prince performed a 41-minute concert, including his protest song, Baltimore, which was inspired by Gray's death. And on the 21st of April in 2016, Prince had been found dead at Paisley Park compound in Minnesota. After the autopsy was performed, his remains were cremated and his close family and friends gathered for a small, private funeral 2 days later. Actually, Prince had undergone like a hip surgery a couple of years prior to his passing, and he claimed that it was giving him like a lot of discomfort during concerts, and it wasn't really touched upon because it's irrelevant. Like, obviously it's came from said surgery. But briefly after, about a month or two, 2nd of June, I believe, I didn't write it down, but I believe the 2nd of June on 2016, the medical examiner's office released results of its investigation, which determined that Prince died from an accidental overdose of self-administered fentanyl. So that's quite unfortunate. So, gone but not forgotten, naturally an incredible artist. We're always going to remember him. And we still love him. We appreciate his music and all his contributions he's given us today. He's incredible. And thus, his music and inspiration lead on to our final conquest. One of my absolute favorite musicians I've ever encountered. The one and only, the loveliest, Frank Ocean. And he was born on the 28th of October, 1987. And he was born in Long Beach, California, and his name was actually Christopher Edwin Bro. But his family moved to New Orleans when he was pretty young, and he spent like the majority of his youth there. But he did get a lot of jazz vibration. Like, a lot of jazz culture was kind of transferred into him because New Orleans is big for that. And he also liked to listen to his mother's R&B CDs a lot. So he kind of was influenced from a super young age too, like music. While he was in high school, he had began like recording, like testing out sounds, recording some music, and he worked like the odd job, so he was off and on a lot to help pay for the studio time. But after he graduated from school in 2005, he was enrolled at the University of New Orleans. However, in August of the exact same year, Hurricane Katrina hit, and it kind of really badly flooded the recording studio where he was working, and it was prompting him to like set aside all of his academic interests, ambitions, goals, like give it up and focus on his music. He moved to Los Angeles to like continue recording his projects, and he had only planned to stay for a brief amount of time. Like, I'm not quite sure how long. I never figured that out, but it wasn't supposed to be long. It was supposed to be temporary. He was supposed to head back to New Orleans. But as he continued to make these meaningful influences on him, he kept meeting bigger people who kept claiming like their inspiration and like all these people that he looked up to. He was like, okay, maybe I'll stick around. And so he decided to extend his stay by forever, really. And he had to take a job processing insurance claims to make money because he hadn't been the biggest. Yeah, like he's not making a lot of money. It's stupid glare. I'm so sorry. There's nothing I can do about it. But yeah, and eventually he got himself into some songwriting deal, and he began collaborating with a couple of producers. So he was developing his big break. Finally, he was getting up there. Getting up to that Jimi Hendrix, Prince vibe level. He began to work with Los Angeles-based hip-hop collective Odd Future, and most notably, Tyler, the Creator, also an incredible artist. I love Tyler. Tyler is very talented, and he kind of helped encourage Frank in his songwriting. He's like, hey! So they're pretty close right now, and they've kind of grown up as artists together, and I freaking love Tyler, the Creator, I'm sorry. Whoa. But at a similar time, he also met with a producer by the name of Tricky Stewart. I don't know. Everyone, if you're famous, you got a weird name. And he kind of helped land him a contract with Def Jam as a solo artist. So, finally reaching his big break. The following year, he had officially changed his name to Christopher Francis Ocean. and he believed that like the new look would be better on magazine covers. I cannot. Back in 2011, pretty fresh into the new year, I think February, Ocean had released a mixtape by the name of Nostalgia Ultra, and he released the recordings as a free download on his Tumblr site. But he didn't tell Def Jam, so he didn't tell his record label that he was doing it, and he announced that on Twitter that he had done it, because he had done that because the label had not been supportive of his efforts after signing him. That kind of sucks. So it wasn't really his big break, if you could really believe that. And the album was like worldwide acclaimed, like whoa. And it received a lot of reviews from NPR, the Rolling Stone, and the BBC, and many others. Like, he was getting his break. Like, if you didn't know who Frank Ocean was, impressed with his efforts, were the notorious Jay-Z and Kanye West, who, well, at Beyonce's prompting, enlisted Ocean to contribute vocals for 2 tracks from their August 2011 album, titled Watch the Throne. Speaking a bit about Channel Orange, which was his follow-up album. It was released by Def Jam Records after he'd finally begun to mend that relationship after a bit of a rocky downfall. By June of 2012, he had unveiled a new track, which was called Pyramids, again, via his Tumblr site. And the following month, he performed another track for the album on Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. You know, once you got to Late Night with Jimmy Fallon, you know you've made it. You know you've made it in the world. Like, you know. Also in July, so about a month later, he had posted an open letter to his website in which he revealed that he had feelings for both men and women. So Prince and Frank Ocean kind of share the similarities in discovering their sexualities, developing their true selves, developing their inner character, which is super sweet. So I can see why he takes influence for Prince, just because he was brave. He knows who he was, and Frank Ocean kind of really appreciated his fearlessness. And wow, do I support them? Anyways, but he really asked not to make it a point to label his orientation and sexuality. Like, he didn't want to be labeled as somebody, and that's pretty sweet. I don't think Prince ever really cared about what people thought about him, and it's nice that Frank Ocean doesn't either. So this album, Channel Orange, had been released for downloads on This album had been released for downloads on the 10th of July back in 2012, and it was actually released a week earlier than scheduled to stop it from getting leaked, because people freaking suck. And so, the album was #1 on the top album charts, and Ocean also made the album available to stream in full. You know where? His Tumblr site. And a week later, Channel Orange had been released in all of the formats. So Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, you name it, it's probably there. It earned Ocean comparisons to R&B greats, such as Stevie Wonder and Prince. Naturally, of course, like, they're very similar. Frank Ocean has a very monotone voice, it's pretty deep, and it's not usually accompanied with many major instruments, almost. It's just monotone. I think that's the word for it, mundane, monotone. I'll play a song, don't worry, don't you worry, I'll play a song. And he actually went on to win the 2013 Grammy Award for Best Urban Contemporary Album, and as well as No Church in the Wild, which was written by Jay-Z and Kanye West, and featuring Ocean's vocals, it won the 2013 Grammy for Best Rap Collaboration. On, I'm pretty sure, back-to-back days in August of 2016, Ocean had released his visual album, which was called Endless, as well as his third album, Blonde. I freaking love Blonde, I'm sorry. Blonde is so good. Blonde is a very good album. I'm gonna play a song from Blonde. Probably going to play Chanel, because it kind of bases around his sexuality a lot more. There is curse words in it though. We're not gonna play this thing. You'll probably see it somewhere on the screen. But yeah, he's incredible. And it ended up hitting top charts for both USA and UK. Both. He's amazing. So, ending all their biographies, the incredible creative human beings that they are, I can go on a little bit about their outfits, their little stylists. I'll pop pictures on the screen as I talk about them. So naturally, being born and like, or being hit with fame, like the early 1970s, right? Like, music was groovy, outfits groovy. He had very flowy vests on most of the time, so he could move, breathable outfits. And he was always seen sporting a jacket. Like, I always saw him in like a jacket, kind of like a folded collared shirt and regular pants. There was nothing really quite iconic about him. He had pretty frizzy hair, but it's nothing to be like, oh my god, like that's how you know. That's him, that is him, that's how you know. So instrument-wise, naturally, electric guitar. He was pretty major about that. That was his thing. That was his song. He was R&B, he was rock and roll, he was jamming. And his lyrics were usually based upon like his interests in women, his love, his kind of his emotions. Manic depression is a good one to kind of give you a vague idea of his emotions. And also there's Can You See Me? Pretty based on his emotions. And Love or Confusion might focus more on his love life, like that may be the focal point. But he usually wrote about his interests, his love, his aspirations. Purple Haze, naturally one of the biggest ones. Purple Haze, all in my brain, lately things don't see the same, acting funny, but I don't know why, excuse me while I kiss the sky. It's more about drug usage, as you can tell. Purple Haze is probably like based on some kind of utilization of a drug. I don't really know what to explain about that, but am I happy or in misery, whatever it is, that girl put a spell on me. Naturally, it's about a girl putting a spell on him. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, it could also, Purple Haze could either be about a girl, drug usage. I'm assuming it could be a girl, but the girl might be an innuendo to drugs. By reading all the lyrics, you can see that it's more so like a drug-related song. Like, yeah, Purple Haze on my eyes. So, I'm not quite sure what that could mean in its full, but I believe Purple Haze may be an innuendo to drug usage. Might have to fact check me on that though, because I can tell you for sure. Prince. Okay, Prince. Okay, Prince has so many albums. He wrote about so many different things. But he usually had a lot of techno, retro, like funk. Like he was into electronic. Like he was had played almost every instrument like under the sun. And his songs were usually based on love interests, like For You and Love, Soft and Wet. But it was also including his like sexuality and experiencing and exploring. Experimenting, that's what I meant to say. Experimenting with different things. Different vibes, you know what I mean? Just as long as we're together, baby, my love is forever, so blue, I'm yours. Wanna be your lover, why do you wanna treat me so bad? When we're dancing close and slow with you, Bambi, still waiting, I feel for you, it's gonna be lonely. All incredibly sweet song. Never meant to cause you any sorrow, I never meant to cause you any pain, I only wanted time to see you laughing, I wanted to see you laughing in the purple rain, purple rain, purple rain. So honey, I know, times are changing. So he's talking to a girl or talking to a boy, you know, sexuality, diversity, inclusivity. And I'm not really sure what to call it. I'm sorry. Sexual exploitation. And he was just talking about himself. He was talking about change. He was wanting to be happy. Under the rain, the sky, purple rain is like a wash of hope, aspiration, just love, tranquility. And he just wanted to feel sane. He wanted to feel good, and he wanted to feel it with this person. I never wanted to be your weekend lover. I wanted to be some kind of friend. Hey baby, I could never steal you from another. It's such a shame our friendship had to end. So, might not even be a lover. It might just be someone that he cares about deeply, that he wanted to be happy with. He wanted to maintain this perfect friendship, and he just couldn't. And of course, as previously stated, Prince is known for his iconic curls, his punk embellishments, his leather. But Prince is amazing. I love Prince so much. So Frank Ocean. He is known to wear a lot of clothes. He wears usually long sleeves. He's not really the stylist. He's not really a stylistic human being. And there's nothing really iconic about him. He's just modern, stereotypical 20-year-old, 30-year-old man clothing, a long sleeve shirt and some jeans, ties when he goes out somewhere fancy. I don't know. He's cool. I love Frank Ocean. Hello. I'm looking at photos of him. You'll see one up there or there. I'm not sure yet. But, wow. Frank Ocean has a lot of songs that are usually correlated to his sexuality, like Chanel. I freaking love Chanel. Chanel's my favorite song. And it's, yeah, I see both sides like Chanel, which is indicating like man, woman, like I see both of them. I see both of their sides. I'm like, both are good. There's not really a particular like flow through all artists. There's not like a flow through all artists that have songs that correlate so beautifully. Like there's Purple Haze and Purple Rain for Jimi Hendrix. There's Purple Haze for Jimi Hendrix. There's Purple Rain for Prince. And there is also there's nothing really for Frank Ocean. I'm not sure the music particularly flows. Like I'm not sure, like I'm sure there's inspiration taken, but I'm not sure it's the same lyrics and it's not the same meanings and they're exact because they're all living their own histories and their stories and their realities. But Frank Ocean probably took some of the inspiration of Prince's freeness with his sexuality, his openness, and channeled that to himself, because he realized this amazing icon did the most with what he had. And he did amazing. He was doing amazing, and I want to take that inspiration and I want to channel it to myself because I know I can be amazing. I'm not sure changes in music have really affected them. Like, I mean, stylistic wise, yes. I'm sure if Jimi Hendrix was around in this time, his music would be a lot more modern. I'm sure he'd kind of kick electric guitar because it's not as common anymore. Prince, oh god, Prince would be doing his own thing. Prince is his own human being. Like, he's making his own music. He's doing his own thing. Regardless of what time period he was born in. He is still quite the icon. And I'm not sure his music would really change just because of the period development. Frank Ocean, I couldn't imagine him playing anything like an electric guitar. He's not really a musician. Like, he doesn't play instruments. He's just a singer. But he is still one of a kind. I appreciate him so much. It's on freaking period. No, I'm kidding. I'm not 100% positive that changes in music would affect each group at all. Frank Ocean took inspiration from Prince's heart. and Prince took inspiration from Jimmy, but their music was basically the same kind of advancements. And Prince kind of grew up with Jimi Hendrix. Prince grew up with Prince. Frank Ocean grew up with Prince. The similarities. Well, I mean, their times weren't the brightest. I mean, they're all African American artists, so naturally they're frowned upon by a greater majority of the world, unfortunately. By disgusting and white, by, like, I don't know. So they kind of were doing their own thing. I'm sure they grew up with a lot of criticism. So they've all built their own walls, they've all built their own barriers. And Prince, I believe, sampled a few. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I stated that. Prince sampled Purple Rain from Jimi Hendrix, Purple Haze. So, yeah. I believe that's all. I'm sure I'm missing something. I know I'm not going to get a good mark on this. Unfortunately, that really sucks, but I mean, I'm not sure how else. I believe I've covered everything. I still have to edit this. Like, this is gonna suck to edit. This is almost an hour worth of footage. But, I don't know, describing how they play with a lot of soul. They play with a lot of heart. A lot of meaning. You know they pour their heart into every song they write. And, yeah. I believe that's it. So, thank you for watching this ozimok. I know this is gonna be a pain for you to mark. I'm gonna try and get it just cut down as I can. You'll know how cut it is by the time I'm done with it. But yeah, I don't know. This was my little TED Talk. This is my podcast. Announcing to the world, i.e. you, about the amazing stylistic creativities, the artists that inspire me. I know I'm not a musician, but they're still quite inspiring people. All grew up with heavily different circumstances. Jimi Hendrix went through a lot when he was a child. And they're all, Prince and Jimmy were gone way too soon. Frank Ocean is still currently around. And he's doing amazing things, and I'm sure he wants to honor Prince. He's never really discussed much about being interested in Jimi Hendrix, but I'm sure he's there. I'm sure he's notably there. And Jimi Hendrix, he's amazing. He doesn't need to be influenced by anybody. I'm sure he was. I never really looked into it. But I love Jimi Hendrix. And I love Prince. And I love Frank Ocean. So, thank you for listening. This is currently 56 minutes and I have to go edit this now. So sorry. But